everybody, I'm Adriana and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video all about how to get into your dream college, and especially for me, how to get into the University of Florida. I'm a public relations student in the College of Journalism and Communications at the University of Florida. I'm about to be a senior, which is kind of scary. I don't know what face I just did, but that's how I feel about it. So I'm about to be a senior. I've definitely had plenty of experience at this school, and I've heard lots of experience from other people on how they got in and what they did to help them get to where they are. So got lots of great advice to tell you guys. When I was applying to colleges not too long ago, I got into every college that I applied for. So it was University of Florida, University of Central Florida, Florida State University, and University of South Florida. So I definitely have plenty of advice to give on how I got into all the colleges that I applied for and how you can get into all of the colleges that you applied for and really just make sure you get into your dream school. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this intro, so let's just go ahead and get started. The way I'm going to kind of format this video so I'm not all over the place, I wrote down a ton of notes on my notebook here, and I'm just gonna kind of read through and elaborate a little bit for you. I have different categories. So it starts off with grades, community service, involvement, test scores, college/major, and then just a couple of like personal branding things and little encouraging note at the end. So first up is grades, and I know that it's a common thought that you need to be like this 4.0 student to get into good colleges, and while it definitely helps, you definitely don't have to like be a perfect human being. Nobody's perfect, and they know that, but there is a way that you can make yourself stand out and challenge yourself without having to get like the perfect like transcript ever. So some things that I wrote down is honors, AP, and DE classes, and then something that I'm just thinking about now is IB classes. So AP is advanced placement, and then DE is dual enrollment. Honors is just more advanced classes. Now in my experience, when I took these classes in my high school, these were weighted. So on a weighted scale, like an A would be a 4.0, B would be a 3.0, and down the line. Now, if it is honors, in my school, it was a 4.5 if you got an A, or if you got a B, 3.5. Now, if you did AP or DE or IB, then all of those were a 5.0 weighted A, and then it went down the line from there. So if you got a B, it was as if you got an A, and if you got an A, it was like amazing. So that is kind of how that was a weighted scale for my high school. I know every high school does it a little bit differently. Some high schools don't even do weighted GPAs. So definitely take this lightly, but this is my experience, and I know that a lot of schools do this. So I definitely suggest making sure that you are challenging yourself and you're taking these classes and really trying to get your GPA as high as you can without killing yourself, obviously. Something that I also really recommend between AP and DE classes is, this is a little bit of a plug for a different route to take to get into colleges that's kind of like a super great kind of shortcut. So something that I did is I took a lot of AP and DE classes when I was in high school, and I took so many DE classes at my college that I was able to get my associate's degree before I even graduated high school, which was pretty cool. And I did that by combining the college credits I got from my AP classes, the dual enrollment college credits that I got, and then I also did some CLEP tests. I don't know what the acronym for CLEP stands for, but it is just a test through, I think, like the College Board, that website. And so what I did for those was I took some AP classes, but even though I passed the class, I failed the test. So most people think, well, that's it, I don't get any college credit, that was a waste of my time, but it's not. So you actually pass the class. If you pass the class, that's great, that helps your GPA. And if you fail the test, it's not the end of the world, because CLEP tests, when I took them, I believe they're only about $100, and you can take a CLEP test, and if you pass it, you will get the college credit for that course. So for example, I took AP psychology, I did well in the class. I can't remember what grade I got in the class, it was either an A or a B, but I did not pass the AP test because AP tests are incredibly difficult, and so that's definitely okay. And instead I just took a CLEP test shortly after because all of the knowledge was fresh in my mind, and then I passed the CLEP test because the CLEP test was far easier than the AP test, and I got the college credit for it. So it was none of my time wasted, and it helped me get my associate's degree. Getting your associate's degree either while you're in high school through dual enrollment and AP credits, or maybe taking an extra year after high school and going to your state or community college and getting your associate's degree, I think is a really great idea, and it's kind of your one-way ticket into the University of Florida. And I know some other public colleges have this too, but definitely the University of Florida has it. And so I'm going to read to you straight what the admissions website for UF says, so that you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So yes, so Florida Public College graduates transferring to UF, which would be you if you got your associate's degree. It says that is an applicant seeking to transfer directly to UF from a Florida public college after receiving an Associates of Arts degree. So it says, the university subscribes to the articulation agreement between state universities and public colleges in Florida. Any graduate of a state-approved Florida public college is eligible for admission to a state university if the applicant has completed the prerequisites of their intended major as specified in the Common Prerequisite Manual and received the Associate of Arts degree. So that is pretty much telling you that if you get your associate's degree and you complete the requirements set forth by UF, and obviously you're in good standing, we got pretty good grades, all that stuff, then you're pretty much guaranteed admission to the University of Florida, which is a really awesome feeling and is a super peaceful thing, because you work really hard and now you want to get into the college that you want to go to, and that is kind of your surefire ticket in. So that's pretty awesome, and I definitely think that helped me a ton, because when I got my associate's degree, I didn't know this at the time, and I found out after, so I was like, man, I stressed out all that much for no reason when I was gonna get it anyways. So that will definitely help you if you get your associate's degree. Now, if you don't want to get your associate's degree, or let's say you haven't done dual enrollment and it's time to apply, you do not have to worry, because that is not the only way to get in. Obviously, there are thousands and thousands of people at UF, and they've all gotten in different ways, and I'm going to explain that to you right now, but that is definitely something you might want to look into if you're really early in your college application journey, and maybe you can squeeze in those extra classes, or just something to think about. After grades and an associate's degree, if you feel like doing that, my next big tip is community service. So community service is something that I think is often overlooked when you're in high school, and it is something kind of like an afterthought. Here in the state of Florida, Bright Futures is a scholarship that pretty much any Florida resident is eligible for, and there are two different tiers. So there's the academic scholar and the medallion scholar, and right now in 2019, if you get the academic scholar award, then you get 100% of your tuition covered, and if you get the Florida medallion scholar, then you get 75% of your tuition paid for by the state of Florida, which is pretty awesome. It's really awesome, actually, not pretty awesome, it's amazing. And something that you need for this is not just the GPA, the SAT and ACT scores, but you need community service hours. For the Bright Future Scholarship, in order to get the academic scholarship, then you need 100 community service hours, and for the medallion scholar, you need 75 community service hours. Now, with that stated, community service hours are obviously super important, because that is literally free money being thrown at you if you're already a good student, just from being a decent human being too, you know? So something that I really suggest is not just doing community service for this reason, but colleges want to look and make sure that you are active in your community, and it's going to show that you'll be active on the UF campus or whatever your college campus is. With that stated, obviously community service is really important to have, but it is also really important to help set you apart when you're applying to different colleges. Now, community service hours is something that colleges look at. They're on your transcripts, and it is definitely a factor to take into consideration when figuring out who are the best candidates to be accepted into a school. When it comes to community service hours, they are obviously really important, but there are two really big things that I wanted to make sure I told you that I think are really important to consider when it comes to picking something to do for community service. One, I think it should be something that is consistent, that you can stay consistent with, that is easy to get hours, easy to get involved, and then the second one is something that is meaningful. Pick something that you can serve and do that is meaningful to you, that you're going to enjoy being there, and you feel like you're making a positive contribution. And I'm not just saying that just so you can feel good and do good, but also just because when you get into college, not all colleges require you to write an essay or anything like that, but a lot of scholarships and a lot of colleges do require you to write essays about XYZ experience. And if you have community service that is really meaningful to you, you're gonna have stories to come out of that with, an experience to share that you can write about, and that makes the entire process so much easier, because you're not scrambling your brain trying to figure out what to write about. You've already got ideas in your back pocket, and it's just nice to show, like, you can tell when somebody's passionate about something when they write about it or talk about it, and they will definitely be able to hear that and see that through your writing or whatever you have to do for your application when you're talking about your community service. I went to Osceola High School for school, and it was really close to Give Kids the World, which is a, how do I describe Give Kids the World? I don't think it's it partners with the Make-A-Wish Foundation and other different foundations to bring kids and their families with terminal illnesses to live here and kind of just spend a week on vacation in this super cartoony and magical place where they can just forget about their life situations and their struggles and the things that are going on back home and in their bodies, and just live out their dream for however much time this child has left with their family. And hopefully sometimes they can live on and grow up to remember the experience, but sometimes it might just be like a wonderful memory with their family. So that's sad and emotional, and it was definitely a hard time sometimes, just because of the reality of what's going on. But what was so great about Give Kids the World is that it is completely volunteer based. So every single person there is a volunteer, and the volunteers run the show, which is super important, and it is so inspiring just to hear. Because the place is run completely by volunteers, they make it really easy to sign up for shifts, and there's always shifts available. So what I did is, it was kind of like a seasonal job almost, where you can like pick up and drop shifts but you're not scheduled for anything ever. So I was able to just pick up shifts whenever I wanted to. I could pick up shifts in the kitchen, in the nail salon. I could pick up shifts with like their housekeeping people, or as a performer, or anything, a setup crew for like their Christmas day or any of that. And so I was able to pick up shifts, or just not if I didn't want to. So if I had a week off from school and I was like, we're gonna get some hours done, we're gonna make some magic, and then that was totally feasible because I could just pick up shifts every day of the week, and I was able to get a bunch of hours at my own time. Not only was it super easy to get a ton of hours from that experience, I was also able to make so many magical memories with families and guests and children that I had so many stories that I could tell when it was time for me to write my application essay or an essay for a scholarship and all that good stuff. So that was definitely a really helpful component of my application and who I was and how I presented myself to universities and all that jazz. So that definitely hit those two key points: consistent and meaningful. And so if you're living in the Central Florida area, you can find something like that, and I'm sure so many places have something that is just doing amazing things for the community that you can get involved in. Speaking of involved in, next thing is involvement. So involvement in your high school and your community are things that are super important to universities. They really want to make sure that they have an all-around amazing candidate to attend their school, and this is something that you really need to just make yourself shine, you know? So the first thing I'm gonna say is leadership positions. Every university, every leader job, all that stuff, they love to see that you have the ability to lead and you have the ability to take charge and make things happen. So definitely take every opportunity you can to find a leadership position and get yourself in it. Now, I'm not saying be the class president. That's not necessary at all. I was a class president. I wasn't even on our student government. Looking back, I kind of wish I was, but it's not necessary. There are totally different ways that you can be in leadership positions without like forcing yourself to do anything you're not interested in. For example, when I was in high school, I was in a ton of different things, but I was in band and I was in our front ensemble, and so I was one of our front ensemble section leaders, and that was a way that I could show that I had leadership capabilities. I was trusted with the responsibility, I was able to execute it, and I was able to lead a group of people. So that was a really great experience, and I was doing something that I loved while I was doing it. So it just kind of works out, and you can definitely find that in any of the things that you're passionate about. Another thing is being involved in different academic groups and clubs and organizations, and then artistic groups, clubs, and organizations, as well as athletic. So obviously pick what you're passionate about, pick what you love. If you don't love music, don't do music. If you love sports, do sports or something like that. But definitely get involved. Find a community, find a place on your campus, and make it your own. Just really dig in deep and commit to it, because they love to see that you are committed to something and that you are able to have really good time management skills, where you're able to do this activity and manage your studies and just be a super cool person all around. Another thing worth mentioning is a lot of high schools have what's either called National Honor Society or Beta Club or something along those lines, that is something highlighting their top performing students, and I definitely think it's super important to get involved in one of those organizations. It's definitely not required by any means, but I feel like most of the people that apply for these big colleges have that on their resume, and so there are definitely some check marks that I feel everybody has that is always good to check off, and then there's always room for other things you can put on there that make yourself stand out. So involvement and the diversity of involvement, like if you are great at sports, do sports. If you're great at music, do music. Just showcase all that you have, you know, get involved and do what you love, and it'll definitely pay off. But these honor societies and different things like that, they just show that you're also really committed to your studies and that you are a forward thinker and trying to pave the way for your future. Test scores. I hated taking the SAT and the ACT, and I took it so many times it was ridiculous. So I understand the struggle. You're not alone. We've been there. We've done it. I'm sorry. You will get through it. But SAT and ACT, love those. So those are something that you should really pay attention to. No, it is not imperative that you have the highest score in the world. Something to note though is that each college does have their own range of scores that their students fall in. So some colleges have a minimum SAT, ACT score that you need to reach either that score or further to be considered for admission. Some universities have a range that they are like, this is where most of our students are in. You should probably be in there, but we're not going to tell you no if you're not, and we're not going to tell you absolutely yes if you are. So definitely look into the colleges that you are applying to and see where they stand on that, but obviously you should try and get your best score as possible. Definitely just make sure to look at the scholarships that you want and the colleges you want to get into and see what ranges most of their students are accepted for, and try to do your absolute best. But if you don't get like the best of the best SAT, ACT score, I really wouldn't worry about it too much, because it is not the end of the world, and it's definitely not something that is going to hinder you from your dreams. As long as you get that minimum score, then you can back yourself up and make yourself shine other ways. For example, your grades, your community service, your involvement, all that other stuff can definitely overpower and outweigh your SAT score. It did for me. It is possible. The next thing I'm going to talk about is your college/major. And this isn't something that I really thought about too much when I was coming into college. I was pre-med at the time. Not anymore, but that's a story for another video. But I was pre-med at the time, and I wanted to be a doctor when I came in and when I was applying to the University of Florida. And something that's really important is most people I feel like don't know what they want to do when they come into college, and that's totally okay. If you're one of those people, you can totally forget this portion of the video. That's totally okay. You will definitely figure it out throughout all of your courses that you're taking in college. Even as you meet people, you'll find things for sure. I came in with something in mind. I was pre-med when I got here. That changed so much, so don't be stressed out if you don't know what you want to do. But if you do know, there are ways that you can use that to your advantage. For example, I was pre-med, and so something that I knew I wanted to do was get as much medical experience as I could get my hands on to really make myself stand out. When you apply for a university, first you're applying to get into the university, and then they place you in your college. It really is helpful when competing against other people for a slot in your college to have experience in that field already. Like I said, if you don't know what you want to do, totally fine. But like me, I was pre-med and I knew I wanted to be a doctor. I was pretty stubborn about it. So something that I did was I got as much medical experience as I could get my hands on. I did a summer program at Nemours Children's Hospital, which is right down the street from me, and I worked a cajillion community service hours in that hospital, and I learned a ton from different people, and I was able to put that down on my resume and talk to people about it because of that experience. And just having that experience kind of sets you apart and makes you show like, no, I'm committed to this, I'm going to make something out of this, and it helps them see like, okay, we want that person. There are definitely different ways that you can do this. For example, right now I'm a public relations student in the College of Journalism and Communications. If you're like me and you're really into journalism and communications, then go ahead and get some experience in that. You know, I feel like most schools have a school newspaper, or they have a what is it? It's not like AV club. I feel like that's what it used to be called, but like, you know, like the morning announcements on the screens and stuff, or the yearbook committee, things like that that are very, you can learn a lot about journalism and have different experiences with it, I feel like that's a great way to really get your feet wet, and it's a great piece of involvement to put on your resume that shows that you're passionate about something, you're passionate what you're going to go to school for, and that really sets you apart. So this is actually a really big tip that I don't think I've ever heard anybody say in one of these videos, and it's definitely something that I didn't do and I wish I did do when I was applying to colleges. So throughout your high school experience, you're gonna have all these different experiences. You're gonna have, like me, I had band, I had cheerleading, I was in like a community service group, I did Give Kids the World and Amours and all that crazy stuff. And then so when it came time for me to apply for colleges, they asked me for a resume and they asked me for all these different experiences, and I was like, oh man, I've done a lot, how do I word all of this? So to avoid that little bit of panic and the long amounts of time in front of your computer trying to come up with things, I definitely suggest that as you're doing experiences, you write this stuff down. Every school, every guidance counselor will have every school will have a guidance counselor, and I know some schools have college advisors. I know mine had it. I don't think that's what it was called, but pretty much the same thing, and they are able to help you construct your resume and word your experience in a way that really showcases what you did and communicates it efficiently for college recruiters. Something that I super advise is taking all these experiences, and once you've written them all out, is putting them into either your resume or a LinkedIn profile. So having a resume is obviously really important, but I feel like for colleges, they never really asked me to give them like a PDF version of my resume. It was pretty much plugging in information. So I didn't feel like that was totally necessary for me as a high school student at the time. Maybe things have changed since then, but something I know definitely hasn't changed is LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is a really, really awesome professional tool to use for everybody. So it's kind of like a digital resume. It is like a professional Facebook where you can put all of your professional experience, word it out, attach different clips, add your portfolio onto it, and that is kind of your one-stop shop for everything that you know how to do and everything you've done. LinkedIn is a really great tool so that you can keep up with all of your information, write it in as you go along. Every time you learn something new, put it in there. Every time you create something else to put on your portfolio, put it in there. And then when you are ready to apply to colleges and that application opens, you're not scrambling, racking your brain, trying to figure out how you word these things. It's already done, and you can just copy and paste it into that application and you're good to go, and you just cut yourself a tremendous amount of time of thinking and worry because you did it earlier. So I really suggest making a LinkedIn account and putting all of your experience in there because it'll help you a ton when it comes time to applying. Something else I wanted to talk about was keep in mind of when you're applying to these colleges. I definitely suggest applying as early as possible. Now, that whole thing I told you about having LinkedIn and having it all ready to go so that when you apply, it is an easy process, that is going to help this out a ton. Now, the sooner you apply, the sooner they can review your application, the sooner you can receive notice. I know different colleges have different way of doing things. So some colleges have a rolling admission, which means you can pretty much send in an application at any time. And then other colleges have admission where there's an application window and you have to apply during that window. And some colleges you'll find out the earlier you put in your application, the earlier you'll find out. And then some colleges have one date and that's when everyone finds out. University of Florida was one date and that's when everyone finds out, and that was a little painful having to wait for it, but it was definitely worth it in the end. But definitely apply early, like the day that application comes out. If you can get your application in, do it. Obviously some require an essay, that's going to take some work. Take your time on that, you don't want to rush that, but the earlier you can apply, it is the better, because the sooner they can get their eyes on your paper, the sooner you can get into their minds, they can start thinking about you, and potentially the sooner you can find out, which means less stress for you and a more peaceful senior year. So that's pretty much it for this video. Those are all of the points I really wanted to hit, all of the tips I had for how to get into your dream college. Mine is the University of Florida, and so if you want to get into the University of Florida, I know all of these tips will help you a ton because that's just what I have my experience in. But overall, I think the most important thing out of all of this is really just to be passionate about something and make yourself shine. The more you're involved, the more you're passionate about what you're involved in will really set you apart. Everybody's super unique and individual, and all of your interests are your own, and I feel like the more that you communicate that, the more you involve yourself in that, the more you can communicate to these universities just how awesome you are. And that's what you want to do. You want to show them that you rock, you know, and you want to make them think that you're just the coolest and they have to have you, you know. So that's my final say. If you guys have any other questions at all, like I said, ask me. But other than that, I'll see you next time. Bye!